What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. It is Jamil with MILMID Studios. Thank you so much for tuning in to another video. Today's an interesting video because we're doing a recap of my most recent trip to New York City with my buddy Alex, Redcat Media. Follow him on Instagram. And for myself, follow me at MILMID Studios. I also have a dedicated black and white and a dedicated film photography page. That's milmidstudios.bw and milmidstudios.film. Before we get into the video, I want to shout out every single person that has subscribed to this channel and who has supported this channel. Much love, much appreciation. You guys have been awesome with my recent photo book projects. My last photo trip was to Japan, and I went with Alex as well. We try to do one every year, and I released Japan 35 through 35. Now, the whole story behind my 35 through 35 series is that the idea, it's a travel photography series where I go to a special, a unique place, and I use a 35mm f2 Summicron lens, a 35mm lens, and I capture and select 35 images for the photo book. Now, these 35 images are my favorite that I believe tell a story about my trip and my experience. So 35 images through a 35mm lens. So I say all that to say this: New York 35 through 35 will be released, available on Amazon, December 2025. Be sure to follow me on Instagram to keep up to date when the book is officially going to be released. It'll be available on Amazon. You can find out more information at www.milmidstudios.com. So for those of you who have followed this channel, you know that I started off with digital photography. The first camera that I had when I started this channel was the Lumix G85, and that was essentially the origin of my POV street photography and the origin of this channel, really. Through the years, I've kind of moved over to different systems such as Canon and Leica, but most recently, I've picked up film. Now, the very first film camera that I bought was the Nikon FM. Beautiful camera. I got it at an antique store for about 70 bucks, mint condition. And I remember I took my first roll for development, and the entire thing was just blank. I didn't understand what I thought that the ISO dial could be adjusted. Like, I was completely ignorant to the mechanics of film, the skill set, the discipline, all that stuff. I was completely ignorant. And for me, it's been really baptism through fire. It's something that obviously you don't have to do as a photographer, but I had interest in it because it was a challenge and it was something new. And film was obviously before digital, and I wanted to sort of appreciate what came before and the challenges that photographers had to overcome before this awesome technology that we have. So I bought the Nikon FM. I moved over and I got a Canon T70, which I still have. Beautiful cameras and super cheap. And I started, shooting more film and adjusting and trying to get better and trying to understand exposure and just exactly how it worked. I eventually bought the Mamiya RB67 Pro SD. Now, this is a really cool camera. It's medium format, takes 120mm film, and I've experimented with this camera, and I got one of my favorite portraits of my wife with this camera. As I invested into these film cameras and in film and in development, it is, there is an upfront cost when it comes to this kind of stuff. I became more interested and I wanted to get better and better. So now to the present time, I have invested and purchased this Leica M4 film camera. The body is about 1967, I believe it was manufactured, and the lens was about 1973. This is my 35 Summicron f2 version 3. Beautiful camera. It is a Safari repaint. I can't afford the original Safari, so this is a Safari repaint, really well done. It was CLA'd, really nice camera, and this was a pretty big investment for a novice film photographer. But I did want to learn. I'm invested in learning. I shot my first roll, and the images were underexposed and my exposure was slightly off. So one thing you have to remember, this Leica M4, just like the Mamiya RB67 Pro SD, is purely analog. There's no battery, there's no internal light meter, and that's why I'm pushing myself to really develop my Sunny 16i. And then also, I obviously use this external light meter, the Sekonic L308X, which has been awesome. In one of my most recent videos, I go over my first test roll with this camera, and what you'll notice is that a lot of the images, unfortunately, were underexposed. And with film, you don't really want underexposed because it's really hard to bring back those shadows and the image appears pretty muddy. So I had this strange idea that I wanted to go on a photo trip. My wife is pregnant, baby's coming soon, so I wanted to make sure to get this trip out of the way so I'm, nice and present for the wifey. So I reached out to my buddy Alex and I said, hey Alex, this is the same guy I went to Japan with. I said, hey, do you want to go on a photo trip? He said yes. We decided on New York. We booked our tickets. Now, this was going to be a big trip for me, and I knew obviously New York was going to be an excellent location for street photography. There's so many interesting people, the music, the culture. It's just, there's so much going on in New York, and some of the great photographers that I watch, they shoot in New York and do street photography in New York. So I knew this was going to be a great trip, and I wanted to make the most out of it. But there's something in the back of my head saying, just bring the film camera. And, I like to challenge myself, and a lot of the time I self-sabotage myself. I knew that, I wasn't completely proficient or completely learned in the ways of film photography. I know I've gotten some pretty nice shots, but I wasn't really confident in taking a film camera to be my main camera on such a big trip, a photography trip. But my invasive thoughts, they prevailed, and I decided that I was going to take this Leica M4 as my main camera because I wanted to do an all film photo book. So it was a challenge. I knew that. I've never traveled with film. I've never had to do any of that stuff. Go to the airport and have your film hand checked. Never done it all. So it was very, stress-inducing, and I didn't know what to expect. When it came down to it, I ended up bringing the Leica M4, the Canon C70, because I knew I wanted to get some B-roll and some good video in New York, and you know what? I brought my safety net, the Canon R6 Mark II, and I'm happy that I did because I was able to get some great shots with that as well. But like I said before, the M4 was my primary camera. So I did some research and I realized that when you go to the airport, if you put your film through the scanners, it can expose your film and it can damage your film. So what I learned is that, you bring a plastic bag. I had all of my film out of the capsules and it was just kind of like just film inside of a plastic bag. And when I went up to security, I just said, hey, I have film. Can you hand check this? And it was very easy. They're like, yeah, sure. They took the film. They hand checked it, and as soon as I went through the security, it was there ready for me to pick up. So it was very seamless. It was a very seamless process, and I was really happy about that. So on my trip, I shot a total of 7 rolls of film. As a matter of fact, the film that I brought, I actually didn't use much of it. I used one black and white. I think it was a TX400. And one color, which is Kodak Gold 200. But what I really wanted to use was some Portra 400. And to get that film, I went to B&H, which is an incredible store. A trip to New York is worth it if you're just going to go to B&H. They have such a cool system with conveyor belts. It's a really, really neat system, and they have everything you need. I didn't have a lanyard for my Sekonic light meter, and I went to B&H, and they had a lanyard. Super long, but it was super convenient to have this around my neck rather than in my pocket, always having to fish around and then meter light. It was really nice to have it hanging around my neck. Now, one of the beautiful things, as we know, about digital photography, this is the Canon R6 with the 28mm f2.8, is that once you photograph and when you take a picture, you see everything live in the back screen. Even better yet, you can just go to a coffee shop, you can export your images, you can edit them right there on the spot. Obviously, shooting film primarily, I didn't have that luxury. So what I wanted to do was find a location where I can go and have the film developed and scanned as soon as possible. And I ended up finding this place called 5R Photo Lab. Now, these guys are awesome. Really great experience. I was able to drop my film off and they had it developed within 24 hours. So I was able to see and kind of gauge how my metering was and how my compositions were and my zone focusing, and I was able to adjust accordingly. So that was massive for this trip. Another great thing that I started adopting was using this notebook to sort of journal about my experience with film and kind of journal about my metering, the conditions for the day, the roll that I was using, what my mindset was, some of the compositions I was taking. And then when the film came back, I was able to reference what I initially wrote and then make adjustments, even if it meant mental adjustments. And I was able to benefit from that tremendously. And what I learned is that I wanted to essentially overexpose by at least one stop. That was a sweet spot for me with how I read my exposure. And I was able to do that because I had this notebook, this reference guide. So highly recommended if you want to get into film. I don't know, many people may do this differently, but I sort of just journal it. For example, I'll give you a little insert. October 22nd, NYC, Leica M4, Summicron 35 F2, Kodak Portra 400. Today was our last day in NYC, and I wanted to use my last roll of Portra 400. Based on my last roll, I wanted to be intentional about overexposing at one stop at the very least, since I was underexposed for my last Portra 400 roll. So I made those adjustments, and I overexposed. I was intentional about doing that. And the roll that I shot was so much better because of that improvement. So definitely a major key. I highly recommend you adopt that. So I'm going to be honest with you guys. Some of my favorite images came from this roll, the Cinestill 800T. Not an easy film to get your hands on, but right now in my film photography journey, this is my favorite roll to shoot with. I was not brave enough to shoot with it during the day and just meter at 500 ISO, but I use this at night. And especially in the Times Square area or any place where you have like a lot of light source, synthetic light specifically, this thing shines. And I got some of my favorite photos of this trip through this film. Highly recommended. Now, although this was supposed to be a purely film photography trip, in the last minute, in the final hour before I had to go to the airport, I decided I was going to bring my safety blanket, which is a Canon R6 Mark II. I had a 28mm f2.8, so a very small footprint. Just dump it in the bag, and you have a safety blanket in case the Leica goes down, or if it wasn't working for whatever reason, or if we had super bad weather where it was rainy. I had this camera that had, the ability to sustain some of the natural elements better than the Leica M4. On one of the days that we were in New York, we were expecting 90% rain, and I didn't want to bring the film camera. It was overcast, so I thought the conditions weren't ideal for film or to really experiment with the film. So I decided to bring this camera. And let me tell you something, man. This is a great camera with a great autofocus system. I was able to do just blind firing from the hip, knowing that the autofocus was going to get exactly what I wanted it to get. And I got some really great photos. As a matter of fact, after I release New York 35 through 35, I'm going to release a book with film and digital images, some of my favorite from the trip, and I think you guys will enjoy it. So keep your eyes open for that. www.milmidstudios.com. Now, the Canon C70 was a camera that I was sort of reluctant to bring because of the size. And I knew that we were going to be walking a lot. I think over the 5 days, we did like over 100,000 steps. And I didn't want to be carrying so much when you're walking that far. But, I don't want to say against my better judgment because I'm happy that I brought it for some of the clips I was able to get, the high quality video. I was able to get some really good B-roll from the Canon C70. And we even stumbled upon an accident, a motor vehicle accident, 10 pedestrians injured, 1 critically injured. And I was able to get some like first responder video footage with the Canon C70. I also have that video uploaded. So check out my videos and you'll see the quality and the beauty of the Canon C70. So yeah, my take on New York, I really, to this day, I believe, it's probably one of the greatest places for street photography. You get such great subjects, interesting subjects. You have such great lighting, even at night when you go to Times Square. A lot of cool structures and architecture, really, Roman-styled buildings, a lot of brick and mortar. It's a really interesting place. It's not a place I would ever live. Heck no, I would never live in New York City, but dang it, I will love to visit time and time again for photography because I think it's a great city for street photography. And those of you who live in New York, oh my gosh, I think that, it's your playground out there. There's so much happening, especially when you compare it to where I live in Alberta, Canada. So if you guys enjoyed the photos that you saw in this video, remember some of them will be featured in my upcoming book, New York 35 through 35. And after New York 35 through 35, there will be another compilation of images, digital and film, that I'll be releasing. Available on Amazon. Visit www.milmidstudios.com. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. Thank you for checking out this video. If you've made it this far, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Really appreciate the support, guys. Remember, the best gear is the gear you have, and the best photos are the ones you take. Don't forget to keep on shooting.